Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me this week for our seed update. So last week we planted a bunch of seeds, and this week we are going to check on them and see how much they grew. Just in case you are new to joining us here, you can type me things over here in this box, or you can have your parents help you, and only I will see what is in there. I cannot see you or hear you, so that's the only way you can talk to me, and no one else can see or hear you. So you guys can only see and hear me. So no one else can see what you're typing, so you can type questions to me. I try to get to them at the end because sometimes it's a little tricky to show you guys cool videos and pictures and talk and answer questions all at the same time. So I'll get to them at the very end. And then sometimes I have questions for you, and they'll pop up down here, and I'll point them out if I do something like that. So without further ado, this week, again, this is the week 1 seedling update. So last week we planted some carrots, some radishes, sunflowers, and a pumpkin. So I planted all of those things, and then I've been watering them, making sure they have all the things that plants need to survive. So we are going to be watering them, making sure they have sun, and making sure they have soil. So since I planted the seeds in the soil, we know they've got that. The sunshine is not a problem where I live in California. So there is lots and lots of sunshine. So watering is the thing that I have been doing to my seeds every day. If you have your seeds inside, you might not have to water them every day, but I have mine outside and it has been hot. So I make sure that my seeds don't dry out. So I am watering them. So today we're going to take a look at our seedlings. We are going to look at some tools for measuring our seedlings, and I'm going to show you how to create a chart for measuring seedlings if you're following along at home. So today we're going to be looking at seedlings and measuring. And you might notice I'm in an office right now, but I have lots of videos of my plants outside. I just don't get as good internet out back in my farm, but we have lots of videos of all of our seedlings. So first, let's take a look at our carrots. So here's a video of our carrot seedlings. So I labeled all of the carrots with the sticks so I would know where I put them. And it kind of just looks like dirt out here. So I don't see any carrot seedlings. So even though I'm like, oh no, my carrots, if I go back and I look at my carrot seed packet, on the back, it says it can take 10 to 25 days for my carrots to sprout. And it's only been 7 days. So it hasn't been long enough for my carrots to sprout. So my carrots are probably starting to grow. I just can't see them yet. So unfortunately, no carrot seedlings yet. So now let's take a look at our sunflower seedlings. Let's see, and I think also our pumpkin seedling was about the same. So our sunflower seedlings, let's take a look at those. So I planted 3 sunflowers, 2 in a toilet paper tube and 1 in a cup. So if we look at the first sunflower seedling, it looks kind of like dirt in there. So I don't really see any seedlings. The second one, I'm just starting to see a tiny little green thing. So it's just starting to sprout. And then this last one, I can actually see the seed is above the ground. So the sunflower's first leaves are inside of that little seed. So it's going to pop open in the next few days. So these sunflowers have just started to sprout. So, and our pumpkin should be right behind these sunflowers. Usually it takes pumpkins and sunflowers about the same time to sprout. So our sunflowers are looking like they're sprouting. So hooray, sunflowers. And then now let's take a look at our radishes. Radishes are the fastest ones. They can usually sprout in as little as 4 or 5 days. So I actually saw them sprout over the weekend. So here's a video of our radish seedlings. So these look like great little seedlings. So they are all popping out of the ground. They're bright green. I can see some leaves on these. So our radish seedlings are looking great. So I'm really happy with our radish seedlings. So now that we've seen that these ones have all gone from seed to a seedling, so to a little sprout, so they have a stem and they have their first leaves. So the first leaves are called cotyledon leaves. So let's take a look at that a little bit closer. So I've got a video of kind of zooming in on our cotyledon leaves. So cotyledon leaves kind of look different than the first leaves of the plant. So here we've got our first two cotyledon leaves, and these are the leaves. They're growing inside the seed. And then this one has one real leaf starting to grow. So that's its first real leaf, and it's going to look different than the cotyledon leaves. These ones, a lot of them just have the first two cotyledon leaves. So again, the cotyledon leaves are the very first leaves that the seedling puts out so that it can absorb lots of sunshine, and then it starts growing its real leaves, which will probably look different than the cotyledon leaf. So we're just starting to see those. So we can describe what our seedlings look like a little bit, but if we want to use some measuring tools to describe them really exactly, I want to measure the height of my seedlings every single week, and I'm going to use some tools to do that. So here I've got some measuring tools. So you can use a whole bunch of different tools here. So I've got 3 different tools that I found in my house, and I've got a ruler. So the ruler is laid out on this side in inches. So it has 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inches, and then it has bigger tick marks. So I can measure a 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch. On the other side, I can measure in centimeters or millimeters. So that's just a different unit. So I can measure in inches, centimeters, or millimeters. And all the lines are kind of differently spaced because they're different sizes. So I have a tape measure also. That measures in inches, and if I flip it over, it measures in centimeters as well. And then I have another type of tape measure. This is one that I use outside when I'm working with wood or measuring really big things. And this one's kind of heavy, but it measures in inches. So it only measures in inches. And I think I want to measure in inches for this project. So I'm going to pick my ruler to measure because it seems like the easiest thing to use. If you don't have any of these tools at home and you want to follow along, you can use something that is all the same size, like Lego bricks. So if you have Lego bricks, Legos, most of them, the standard bricks are all the same height. So you could measure your plants in Legos and say how many Lego bricks are your plants in their height. Whereas I'm going to be measuring in inches. So I'm going to be measuring along on this side here. So let's go and measure our sunflower first. So let me show you guys a video of me measuring our sunflower, which the sunflower has just popped up. I can't even see its cotyledon leaves, but it's above the soil. So we can take a look here, and I can put my ruler right next to the plant, like right at the level of the dirt. And now I'm going to zoom in and see how tall I think this sunflower is. And I have a picture too, because if you want to guess, down in this corner over here, you can guess how big this sunflower is. So we can we're measuring with our ruler. So it looks like, let me put up the picture so that we can, let's see, where's my picture of a sunflower? I'll pop that up really fast. So here's my picture of a sunflower, and I've got a red arrow at where I think that sunflower is measuring. So I can see that, let's see, let me move where I am so that, oops, make myself big again. I'll just put myself down in the corner. And then now I'm going to draw over this so that I can walk you guys through how I'm measuring. So it looks like, so the 1 inch mark is right here. So that's where the number 1 is. So that's number 1. And then these big tick marks, they're actually 16 little tick marks up to the 1 inch. So that's kind of confusing because a lot of times when we count in tens, but inches are divided by 16. So it's actually easiest to divide these into quarters. So 4 of the little tick marks. So we got 1, 2, 3, and then 4 is kind of a bigger tick mark. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got kind of a bigger tick mark. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and 1 inch. So let's see what you guys are saying. So it might look kind of like a 1/4 inch. It was a bigger one. And it looks like most of us are saying this seedling is 1/2 of 1 inch. And we can kind of see that based on this spacing too. So if I'm just using my eyeballs instead of the little tick marks, this distance and this distance are kind of the same. So if this one's 1 inch and I want to divide 1 inch in half, there we go. So it does look like a 1/2 inch. But if I measure all the little tick marks, so I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tick marks, that's where I'm measuring is at 1/2 inch. So our sunflower seedling is 1/2 inch tall. So I also have, let's see, I think I've got to go back in my presentation a little bit so that we can look at a worksheet that I've got. So, and I've got this up on my website, or it will be up on my website in about an hour, so that if you are doing your seedlings at home, you can follow along. So in our measuring seedlings sheet over here, I've got a space so that you can put your plant name and date over here. So we're going to say the name of our plant and then the date that we planted it. And then we can put today's date and each date that we measure it up here. So I'll put today's date up here. Next week, we'll put the new date over here. And then in these boxes, we will track the height of our plants. So if I fill in our plant names and today's date, I've got a space for our carrots, which we planted on May 5th. We've got a space for our pumpkin, which we planted on May 5th as well, our sunflowers, and our radishes. And then I put today's date is May 12th, so 1 week later, so 7 days later. So we just measured our carrot and our pumpkin didn't sprout, so I'm just going to put that in the height. They're not sprouted yet, so they're just dirt. So I'll track them the next week instead. But when we go to our sunflower, we saw that our sunflower was already 1/2 inch tall. So I can put 1/2 inch. So that's what I put right here in our sunflower field. And I always like to put the unit. So inches are the units in which I'm measuring, because if I just put 1/2, I'm not sure if I meant 1/2 inch, which I can see on this side is maybe about the size of my finger. But if I go to centimeters, over here, 1/2 of a centimeter is much tinier than 1/2 of an inch. So I always try to put what unit I'm measuring in. So since I measured in inches, I'm going to put 1/2 inch on my measurement. So I remember next week when I measure that I'll measure in inches, so I don't accidentally switch to something else like centimeters or millimeters. So the next plant that we're going to take a look at is our radish. So let's take a look at our radishes. And our radishes, a lot of them sprouted. So let's take a look. Whoops, and I'll clear my drawings. So let's take a look at our radish seedlings. So our radish seedlings, when I look at the seed packet, it actually says my radish seedlings are supposed to be 2 inches apart. And sometimes I had some seeds that are too close. So that tiny little seedling and the bigger seedlings are far enough apart, but these two, the bigger two, are too close to each other. So I'm going to thin them. So I'm actually going to chop one of the seedlings down. I'm not going to pull it out because radishes grow their roots and they have really delicate roots at this point. So I don't want to damage them by pulling them. So that's why I'm cutting them with a little pair of scissors. Because if I don't cut them and I just keep all of the seedlings, then my seedlings might not get everything they need to grow. So my seedlings need soil, which they have. They need water, which I'm giving them, and they need sunlight. And if I have 2 radish seedlings that are very close to each other, when their leaves pop out, one of the leaves might shadow the other one. So when the plants are too close, they might not get enough sunlight. So that's why I went through and chopped all, like some of my little radish seedlings that were too close. So I made sure each seedling, there was only one seedling every 2 inches. So I went and I measured first. So I wanted to make sure to thin out my seedlings before I started measuring how tall they were. So let's take a look at measuring our radish seedlings. So we've got our radish seedlings over here. And our radish seedlings, so they're looking really nice. I'm going to get my ruler, make sure I'm on the inches side. And then let's measure this one. And this one's like it's 1 1/4 inches. So because it's at that next big tick mark there in the out of the 3 big tick marks in between inches. So I was just double checking. Yeah, so it definitely looks like it's 1. And then at that kind of next big tick mark, right there is 1/4. Our next one is only about a 1/2 inch tall. So that one is a lot shorter than the other one. And then this one here, it looks like if you look at the top of the leaf, it's about 1 1/4 inches as well. So I've got a lot of radish seedlings. So one way I could do that, so let's go back to my chart over here. So one way I could do that is I could write down a new field where I could label the radishes like radish number 1, radish number 2, and radish number 3. So that way I know that each time I'm measuring the same plant just because I have a lot of radishes. And those were the 3 radishes at the very end of my row. So I kind of know where they are, but I should probably put a little stick in there to note which one is which so that I don't accidentally mix them up. Because if one week maybe one gets shorter, maybe I measured the wrong one. So that's why I should always label which one I'm measuring. So for the older kids out there, if there's anyone who's a little older, if you've got an older sibling, there's something a little fancy that I did with my radishes, is I took an average of my radishes. So an average would be that I measured 3 plants. So I would take all of those and put them on the top. So I got 1 1/4 was one of my measurements. So that was the first one that I measured. That second little small one was only 1/2 inch. And then my third one was 1 1/4. And then I divide that by the number of plants that I have. So I had 3 plants. So I'll divide by 3. And this will give me their average height. So it's kind of like the middle-ish height that I have. So not necessarily, because definitely I had 2 tall ones and 1 short one. So this is the average height of all of my seedlings. So to show you guys my work for averaging, and let me move where I am so I'm not blocking everything. So I kind of changed my 1/2 inch into quarters so that I could add it a little more easily, because it looks like if I'm just adding the fractions here, I have 1/4 plus 1/2, which is actually 2 quarters. So down here, I've got 1/4 plus 1/4 is equal to 1/2. So that's that 1/2 inch. And then the first fraction with the 1 1/4, so I've got 1/4. And then my last fraction is also 1/4. So if I add up all of my fractions, they actually equal, so if I'm looking at that circle, they actually add up to 1 whole circle. So all of my fractions added up to 1. And then I have 2 whole numbers left to add in there. I had 1 1/4 and 1 1/4. So I already added up the quarters. So I've got now 3 total. Let me move where I am one more time so that I can click on the right things. So I can show you guys my work one more time. Oops. And I'll move back up here. So I have 3 inches divided by 3 plants. And 3 divided by 3 is 1. So that is how I got an average for my plant height. So my average plant height, I had 2 plants that were taller than 1 inch, but I had one plant that was shorter than 1 inch. So I had 1 1/4, 1 1/4 were my taller plants, and 1/2 was my smaller plant. And that averages out to their average height is 1 inch. So that's what I'm going to write down. So I actually wrote down in here, I wrote down all of my individual plants. So I wrote down my 1 1/4, my 1/2, and my 1 1/4 divided by 3. And so I said I've got an average height of 1 inch for my radishes. So that's a little complicated for our younger viewers, but if we have any older kids watching, if you want to be a little more tricky with your math and your plants, that's a way to do it. So let's see. Now I think that is the end of my plant update. So we have now measured 2 of our plants, our sunflower plant and our radish plant. So let me stop this presentation so you can look at me. And then next week, hopefully some of our carrots and our pumpkin will have sprouted, and we're going to see how much our radishes and our sunflowers grew. So I'm going to take a look at over here. And if you have any questions, you can type them in over here and I'll answer them now. So let's see. Do I like plants? I love growing plants. So I'm actually really excited to do this project because I'm excited to grow my pumpkin because I usually grow that out in my backyard. Instead of growing it on the ground, I actually grow it on a trellis. So I have an arch that goes over one of my pathways that I can walk under. And I can actually get the pumpkin to grow up over the arch, and then the pumpkins hang down from the archway. It's pretty cool. These are tiny pumpkins. So they're sugar pie pumpkins. So they're pretty small. So they're not too heavy and they don't knock down my trellis. But I really like growing my plants. I also really like the taste of radishes and carrots. They're my 2 favorite root vegetables to grow. And then my last one, my sunflower, my bees really like. So I really like all of the plants we chose. And it's handy because they're pretty quick growing plants. Let's see, I have another question is, am I a farmer? And I like to consider myself a farmer because I have a garden in my backyard where I'm growing all these vegetables. I keep honeybees in my backyard. I have chickens in my backyard, and I have some miniature sheep. And I also have some kitties. So on Thursday, we're going to do a kitty care class. So we're actually going to look at how I take care of my kitties and examine all the things my kitties need to live and what I need to do to take care of them, and then what I get from my kitties. So let's see, we've got another plant question. It is, how tall do sunflowers grow? So there are actually a lot of different kinds of sunflowers. So different ones grow different heights. So let's see, I think I've got some sunflower packets on my desk. So this is one variety that I really like. So it's a sunflower and it's a lemon queen sunflower. And let's see, it says this one grows. Let's see if it's going to tell me how big it grows. I think this one doesn't grow quite as tall. Oh, so this one says it grows 5 to 7 feet tall. So I'm about 5 feet tall. So I'm kind of short for an adult, but the sunflower might be my height. So 5 to 7 feet. So that's probably just a little bit taller. It could grow a little bit taller than your parents. So let's see. But the sunflowers that I planted are this crazy variety, which is a mammoth gray striped sunflower. So these sunflowers can grow 8 to 10 feet tall. So if this sunflower grows 10 feet tall, this would be twice as high as I am. So it would be like 2 of me standing on top of my head. So 2 adult humans tall, more or less. Let's see. Where did I get my sunflower seeds? So I got my sunflower seeds probably at a garden store, so called a nursery. So a nursery has lots of little plants for sale. Sometimes you can get them at the hardware store, like Home Depot or Osh, Lowe's, things like that. So if your parents are going to get some tools or something they need to repair in the house, there's often a section with seeds in it. And sometimes they even sell seeds in the springtime in the grocery store. So sometimes you can find them there. But I went to a special plant store because I like buying lots of plants and plant things. So I got my seeds from a nursery. Let's see, how many plants do I have in my garden? I actually have a lot of plants in my garden. My garden is not very big, and I try to plant my plants very strategically so that I can have as many plants as I want. So that's why instead of having the pumpkin take up lots of space on the ground, I grow it on a trellis so that I still have walkways in my garden and the pumpkin takes up less space. So that way I can have more plants in my garden. So I have a few trees in my garden. So in my front yard, I have an apricot tree, a lemon tree, and an orange tree. And then in my backyard, I have a persimmon tree, a plum tree, an apple tree, and then I also have all of my veggies in my veggie bed. So I have carrots, I have radishes, I have kale. Let's see, what else am I? Oh, I also have in some of my pots, I have mint, and I have, let's see, chives and basil. So I show off some of them in my salad class from last week, which I have a video of. And I had one where we did all of the parts of the plant that we eat, and that actually shows off a lot of my garden. Let's see. Another question is, what am I going to use my pumpkins for? So my pumpkins, since they're small pumpkins and they're sugar pie pumpkins, so that's the variety of pumpkin that I chose to plant, I actually use my pumpkins for making pumpkin pies. So around Halloween time, when some of us are carving them, I actually take my pumpkins and I cut them into little pieces. And inside, there's a bunch of seeds. I actually save some of the seeds to plant next spring. So the seeds that I planted this year, I actually saved from a pumpkin I grew last year. The rest of the seeds, because there are a lot of seeds in a pumpkin, I actually took the seeds, I cleaned them, I washed them, and then I put them on a cookie sheet, and I put some butter and some salt on the cookie sheet. I mixed them all together, and I put them in the oven, and I roasted my pumpkin seeds. So I actually ate my pumpkin seeds, and then I took the pieces of pumpkin that I had chopped up, I put them in a kettle, so kind of a big pot on my stove, and I steamed them. So with a little bit of water, I steamed them until they were nice and soft. And then you can mash them up just like mashed potatoes, and I used them in pumpkin pies, in pumpkin soup. They were really delicious. So I really enjoyed my pumpkins from last year. Let's see. And I've got another question is, can we learn about bees next week? Yes, I think I'm going to do a double bee feature because I have a special request to do my Save the Bees presentation again. So I'm actually going to do that earlier in the morning on Thursday. So if you want to 11 next week on Thursday, so not this week is kitties. Next week, I'll have Save the Bees, which goes over the reasons why we like bees and why bees are in trouble. So I'll do that at 11. And then at 3:30, our regular spot on Thursday, I will be doing a presentation on how to check for some of these pests and diseases in my beehive. So we're going to do a double feature on bees, and I'm going to have 2 classes about bees on Thursday. Let's see. Oh, and someone says, I like your chicken called Captain Chicken Pants. So in a little bit, I'm actually going to give an update on the chickens. So I think next week when we finish our seed project, so when we measure our seeds one more time, I will show you guys what the chickens are up to, because I think I like to check in on the chickens. So I actually, this weekend, 2 of my chickens that we were doing our weekly chicken updates, so Delilah and Cookie, went to a different forever home. So they actually got adopted by another chicken farmer. So she's going to send me some updates so we can see some pictures of Delilah and Cookie. But I still have Ross, Captain Chicken Pants, living with me. So I can still take pictures of those 3 chickens. And then for our next weekly project, since we're only going to do 1 more plant update, so we're going to measure our plants 1 more time. So we're going to see how much they grew next week and if our other ones have sprouted. I actually I was on a walk today and I found some caterpillars. So I'll show you guys my caterpillars. Probably in 2 weeks, I'll show you the caterpillars. They take a little bit to turn into a cocoon. So I will give you guys, we'll do a kickoff on a butterfly unit, and then we will monitor them for a few weeks until the end of school, about the middle of June. So that'll be our next weekly update project. So join me on Thursday for our kitty project, and then next week we'll be doing another seed update and our bee lessons. Let's see. Oh, one more question is, what do the pumpkin seeds taste like? Well, I put salt on them. I think they taste a little salty, but honestly, they're pretty mild. They don't, I mostly notice the texture when I eat them, because when you eat the whole seed, so it's the seed that's inside, and then it's kind of got this shell casing. So when you eat them whole like that, they're really chewy. So it takes a while to chew them. So I actually mostly taste the salt that I put on top, and then the chewiness of chewing up that pumpkin shell, the little seed shell. So that's what I think pumpkin seeds taste like, is they don't really taste like a whole. It's the things that I add to them, and then the texture, the chewy texture that I notice. So I really like pumpkin seeds, and the next time you carve a jack-o'-lantern in October, you can try to save your own seeds and roast them, because they're really tasty. Or you could try to save some of your seeds and grow them in the springtime. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys on Thursday. Bye.